Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. I am back from my short break, and to celebrate the podcast's first birthday, the Throwback Friday series has returned. For the first episode, I am bringing you a banger of a record, one of my favourite albums of all time, Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. And before we get into the episode, if you enjoy music discussions like this, please consider following the podcast or leaving a like, depending on where you're listening. It really helps the show reach more people, and it means a lot for a small independent podcast like this one. Songs from the Big Chair is the second studio album by English pop rock band Tears for Fears, and it was released on the 25th of February 1985 by Phonogram Records and Mercury Records. It is the follow-up to the band's critically and commercially successful debut, The Hurting, which was released in 1983. The Hurting was much darker and personal, whereas the follow-up saw the band introduce a mainstream sound with some incredible songwriting and arrangements. There is no sophomore slump going on here. Tears for Fears completely knock it out of the park. The project is notable for having big radio-friendly hits with some of the tracks, and more on that later. But what is remarkable about Songs from the Big Chair is the production. The record is produced by Chris Hughes, former member of Adam and the Ants. He is assisted by Dave Bascom, who handled the engineering for the project. If anyone asks me what my favourite production is in a record, or what sounds the most impressive, I usually name check this record. It's hard to believe that the production and engineering took place during 1984 for a February 1985 release. Every time I listen to this, I am blown away and reminded what a stellar piece of work this record actually is. The album title came from Sybil, an American television film from 1976. The film is about a woman played by Sally Field with multiple personality disorder who only feels safe when sitting in an analyst's big chair. The album title was changed by Roland Orzabal as the project was to be titled The Working Hour. Kurt Smith explained that the change of the album title reflects in the distinct personalities of each song on the album. He acknowledged the darkness with The Hurting, the personal nature and introspection. In the Big Chair is the band moving in a varied sonic direction with a huge, bold production. This is a record that has been with me all my life. I remember the summer of 1985. There was so much amazing music present. I grew up listening to Tears for Fears. My dad played them all the time in the house. My uncle was a huge fan and collected the 12-inch singles. As I got older, I ended up having the CD in different formats. The standard, and then much later in 2006 with the deluxe version. When I got my first turntable, I made a list of albums to buy on vinyl, and Songs from the Big Chair was at the top of my list. I was blown away when I added the vinyl to my collection. It was like experiencing the album all over again. So much stood out to me in the production, how the instruments separated in the arrangements. And of course, Roland and Kurt's vocals just completely shine on vinyl. I've recently upgraded my vinyl copy with the Blood Records variant, which was released for the album's 40th anniversary last year. I was so lucky that I managed to secure a copy, and if you'd like to see it in all its glory, please check out my social media. It's such a special record to me, and I did consider this record to feature in a future series, but I had a change of heart. With my podcast turning 1 year old on the 3rd of June, I made the decision to bring back Throwback Friday. The Throwback Friday was the first series I ever did, and I always knew that they would return at some point. I wanted to bring you a huge monumental record, which not only kicks off the series, but it is the start of the second year of my podcast. It's a record that I have been dying to talk about for so long, and the time is so right to bring it to you now. I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with this record and Tears for Fears, especially the big singles. I have seen so much love for this with the vinyl community on TikTok, and it's beautiful to see. But if you haven't dipped your toes into this album in full, now is the time. I hope after this episode is finished, you will experience the record. It's intelligent pop, beautifully constructed with some killer songwriting, and you'll be amazed by the clean, vibrant, and crisp production, which just gets better and better with age. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Shout. This track certainly doesn't need any introduction. I'm sure the majority of you listening will be aware of Shout. It was a huge worldwide hit for the band, and over 40 years later, it still receives heavy radio airplay. It's one of those timeless classic pop songs that will live on forever in pop culture. And every time I hear it, especially with the intro, I get transported back to when I was younger. My dad playing it on the stereo, and 5-year-old me pretending to play the keyboard on the coffee table. What I find staggering about Shout and its lasting impact is all down to the powerful production. As soon as the needle drops or when you press play, you just know that this record is going to be bolder, more accessible, and anthemic in the delivery. Shout hit the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks in August 1985, which was a huge achievement for a British band at the time. On the surface, you might think that Shout is quite simple, but when you start to break it down, the track begins to reveal itself. From the booming, heavy percussion and drums, which are almost industrial if you listen carefully, to the synth bass and power chords. Roland Orzabal explained in an interview that the song was written in his front room, and all he had was the repetitive chorus. I've always thought that the repetition reminded me of Hey Jude by the Beatles, that sing-along moment in the climax of the track, and Roland explained that the chorus of Shout serves as a mantra, and I completely get that. He eventually played the loose demo to keyboardist Ian Stanley, who declared that the song would be a worldwide smash. And he was so right. Ian received co-writing credits for his contribution of helping to complete the song. The album version clocks in at 6 minutes and 31 seconds, and not 1 second is wasted. Tears for Fears pack in so much, from the powerful and passionate vocal delivery by Roland to the incredible drums played by Manny Elias. And of course, I can't talk about this track without mentioning that killer guitar solo towards the end. Something that you wouldn't expect in a Tears for Fears song. But, in my opinion, it's a guitar solo that is completely underrated. It is so fucking satisfying when it comes in. You can't help but to feel uplifted by it. And when I hear that guitar solo, I always think of my younger brother, Rich. He absolutely loves this track and the guitar and drums especially. So, Rich, if you're listening, this track is for you. Track 2, The Working Hour. What I love about this record is that the songs are allowed to fully breathe. Nothing ever feels rushed or out of place. The working hour clocks in at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and I could honestly have another 10 minutes of it. There is absolutely no filler on this record. The quality and care are also present in the album's deep cuts. The production and mixing on the working hour are absolutely off the scale. The track opens with an instrumental introduction, which runs for around 2 minutes. The saxophone solos are played by Will Gregory from Goldfrapp, and it's balanced beautifully with the rest of the instrumentation. While Mal Collins is also credited with playing saxophone, he was more involved with the arrangement. It is Will Gregory who steps up to deliver the killer solos in the track, and this was obviously well before he co-founded the electronic music duo Goldfrapp. Lyrically, it talks about becoming famous, having that immediate success, and the pressure of maintaining that. Being in the public eye, the intense scrutiny, and record company pressure of constantly having to deliver. Because if you don't, they will drop you, and there'll be someone else to take your place. It's cutthroat and brutal, and the intense pressure is something that Roland and Kurt would eventually experience with their next record in 1989. The music business can make you, but it can absolutely break you. The post-chorus has the lines, "Fear is such a vicious thing, it wraps me up in chains." The fear in question could mean the downfall, that the pressure becomes too unbearable to take, the fear of failure and the come down and eventual depression. Then in the bridge, Roland cries out, "Find out what this fear is about." His vocals are so passionate at this point. You feel his anxieties and believe every word he is saying. The production and mixing are incredible here. Both Chris Hughes and Dave Bascom really show off their skills. The separation with the instruments and the balance of the instrumental and vocals is so impressive. When I play this track, I completely forget that it's just over 40 years old. It still sounds so modern and fresh. All of the elements work in perfect harmony, and this is proof that you can make a song well over the 5 minute mark and still engage the listener all the way through. It's immaculate pop songwriting with a powerful production that still delivers in 2026. Amazing. Track 3, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I would be really surprised if any of you listening is not aware of this song. Like Shout, I would say that this is one of the band's signature tracks and the one that people associate them with. It was a massive success. It peaked at number 2 in the UK and topped the US Billboard Hot 100. It also won Best Single at the Brit Awards in 1986. In 2015, 30 years after its release, the song was honoured at the annual BMI Awards for achieving 6 million radio airplays. I suspect this number has grown significantly since then, as I still hear the song played all the time on UK radio, and its popularity has grown on social media platforms such as TikTok. Is it my favourite from the record? No. Did I get a bit sick and tired of hearing it all the time? Yes. But at the same time, I get it. I understand why people love it so much. I did have a break from listening to this track, even in the context of the album, and that's completely okay. But the strength and lasting impact is undeniable. The complexity of the lyrics is juxtaposed with the bright, sunny, upbeat instrumental. The message of the song still rings true in today's political climate, and it speaks to the anxieties of every age. It's got that carefree, wind in your hair vibe about it, but once you start to unpeel the layers, there is something sinister lurking, and this is something that obviously you wouldn't catch when I was 5 years old dancing around in the living room. Tears for Fears are truly the masters of creating pop songs with a dark undercurrent running through them. The debut, The Hurting, is prime example of this. For a pop record, it's deeply unsettling in places, and what I love about them is that they want you to feel uncomfortable, to think about the state of the world, confronting your demons and childhood trauma. But at the same time, it's balanced by these gorgeous, sparkling instrumentals with some first class production. The power of their songwriting is proof of their longevity and lasting impact. This track will live on forever. Radio stations will still be playing it in 20, 30 years and beyond. And the cover version by Lorde, which was featured on the soundtrack to The Hunger Games Catching Fire, exposed Tears for Fears to a brand new audience. Lorde's powerful interpretation on this pop classic was a risk, but she executed it beautifully. I highly recommend giving it a listen if you are a fan of Lorde's work. Track 4, Mother's Talk. It's hard to believe that Roland Orzabal has admitted that he does not like this track. It's one of my favourites from the record. I just love how aggressive the production is. It's creative and doesn't sound like anything else that the band has done. Even Chris Hughes and Dave Bascom have said that even though the song was important to the band's development sonically, it's not one of Orzabal's best. I am going to politely disagree. The inspiration behind Mother's Talk is something that mothers say to their children about pulling faces. Roland explained that they say the child will stay like that when the wind changes. The When the Wind Blows line is inspired by the cartoon book When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs. The story is about an elderly couple's attempt to survive a nuclear attack and to maintain a sense of normality and fallout and nuclear winter. That is some fucking dark stuff to even think about. And these themes are something that you wouldn't expect in a big commercial pop record. What I love about Mother's Talk is that it's much grittier than, say, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I think sonically it belongs in the same universe as Shout. It's got this bombastic full production, and I'm here for it. Again, it sounds so fresh and modern. It certainly doesn't sound like a product of 1985. I will never get over how amazing this record sounds. What really works for me is the variation of the synths and aggressive drums and percussion. Like Shout, it's almost industrial in how it sounds. The dark nature of the lyrics really works in this arrangement, and it seems like the whole track is just progressing at such a rapid pace and eventually explodes with the extended instrumental outro. If you own a copy of the vinyl, then hopefully you will know how good these songs sound. This track in particular is a highlight for me, and I will always love and appreciate the bold, unique production. If you're listening right now and enjoying this is your cue to hit like before you forget. I really do appreciate all of the support. Thank you. Track 5, I Believe. We now have a change of pace in the record. After 4 huge sounding tracks, this ballad is a refreshing switch up. This is Roland's favourite track from Big Chair, and it's easy to see why. He dedicated I Believe to English musician Robert Wyatt, and the result is stripped back, with the main focal point on the vocals and the poetic nature of the lyrics. The track opens up with the line, I believe that when the hurting and the pain has gone, we will be strong. This could be an extension of their debut, The Hurting, and the callback here feels like it's continuing with the theme of Primal Scream, but at the same time, it still feels personal and introspective. You can take away whatever connects with you and what you believe in with this track. I feel that Roland is asking these questions to the listener, but he's also trying to find the answers by singing the words he has written, maybe as comfort or reassurance to himself that things will all work out in the end. The stripped back arrangement really is impactful for a track like this. I don't think it would have worked if it was backed by a wall of synths and heavy percussion. Will Gregory makes another appearance and plays a soulful saxophone melody which adds some lovely texture to the piano. It's also got a live jazz club feel about it, which is timeless. It might not be the obvious immediate track from the record, but the one that is a slow burner. And if you feel that this one isn't clicking, trust me, you will be listening one day and a certain line or melody will just hit you. There was a period when this track just didn't click with me at all, but I stayed patient and it's one that has slowly revealed itself over time. A track that I have learnt to fully appreciate with age. Track 6, Broken. Okay, we are back with the full production, and Broken to me kind of serves like an interlude in this point in the record. It clocks in just under 3 minutes, which by today's standards is a fully fleshed out song. Broken first appeared as the B-side to the 1983 single Pale Shelter, titled as We Are Broken. This version is reworked and features additional lyrics. It continues with the themes explored in The Working Hour, and as described in verse 1, between the searching and the need to work it out, I stop believing everything will be alright. The previous track had Roland questioning life and finding the things that he believes in. But here, he has stopped believing that things will work out. He has given up with the search for happiness and declares that we are broken. I mean, I applaud the honesty. Roland and Kurt have talked about their unhappy childhoods, the trauma and pain that they had to endure growing up. And as you get older and mature, you get to a point in life and you start to ask yourself, Will I ever be happy? Do I even deserve happiness? Will knowing all the answers make me content? Even though the track is lyrically sparse, there is still a lot present and so much to think about. That is a true skill of a songwriter. I've mentioned this in my Mitski episodes. She has the skill of delivering short songs with sparse lyrics, but they say so much. I get the same feeling with Broken, but they also give you a hint that the next track is going to be a full on banger. They incorporate the piano and synth melody from Head Over Heels into Broken very subtly, and the melodies in both outros are identical. It's such smart, clever songwriting. I love it when artists thread fragments of other tracks. To me, it shows a meticulous attention to detail and makes a record concise and cohesive. And I don't think you can get a much more cohesive record than this. Track 7, Head Over Heels and Broken Live. So I've grouped Head Over Heels and Broken Live into one here. I know they were separated in previous versions, but I have gone with the 40th anniversary track listing for this episode. My copy of the Blood Records variant that was released last year just has Head Over Heels stated on the back cover, so that's what I'm going with here. I read that Head Over Heels took 2 years to develop, and it's clear to see why when you hear it. This track is massive with a full-on production and ever-changing arrangement. I had forgotten about this track until the release of the cult film Donnie Darko in 2001. When you hear this track in the film during the iconic high school introduction sequence, it all clicks into place. There is no dialogue present, but through the song, it allows the scene to fully breathe as a musical montage to introduce several key characters. I read that the director Richard Kelly actually wrote the sequence with Head Over Heels in mind. Even though it's such an early stage, the production team had not yet officially secured the rights to use the song in the film. I would assume that a lot of people found out about Tears for Fears through Donnie Darko. Something like that is really powerful. Art introducing art. And thank God the band gave clearance because you really couldn't imagine that scene featuring another song. It's a romantic love song, but not in an obvious sense. It's not sugary sweet. It is Tears for Fears after all. It tackles the uncertainty, fears, and anxieties in a new love affair. But despite the concerns, at the end, Roland is like, fuck it. He declares in the bridge, and this is my 4-leaf clover. I'm on the line, one open mind. He is going to take the leap, take his chances with this person, and whatever happens, happens. The outro is a metaphor of that. I think it serves as a celebration of love, like a jubilation. It's not often Tears for Fears tread into this light at the end of the tunnel with positivity, but it absolutely works here. They stop the song from being a cliche or a bit cringe. In someone else's hands, this could have been such a mess, but the 2-year development of the track really shows in the final product. The sing-along outro feels like to me, I am in love with this person and I want the whole world to know. I think we have all felt like that about somebody in our lives, and Tears for Fears tap into that world perfectly. The sudden shift from the driving, slightly tense pop groove into that explosive, soaring la 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 outro is so euphoric. It perfectly mirrors the emotional release of finally surrendering to love after fighting it. I can't talk about the song without mentioning the bass line. That fucking bass line. It's complex and iconic all at the same time. It's truly monumental, a perfect track in every way. It's one of my highlights from this record and one of the greatest singles from the 80s decade. The album version transitions into Broken Live, and that transition is a stroke of genius. It's not jarring whatsoever. It's smooth, and when you listen to it, it's like the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And no, they are not done yet, because as the live version of Broken fades out, it beautifully blends into the album closer, which is probably the most experimental track on the entire record. Track 8, Listen. I'm not sure if this is a popular opinion or not, but I think Listen is one of the strongest tracks on the album. They are all strong in their own unique way, but there is something about Listen that I am constantly drawn to. Even when it pops up in my playlist, I never skip it. It serves as the perfect eerie palate cleanser after the euphoric pop explosion of Head Over Heels. First of all, it is a masterclass in 1980s sound design. I know I keep saying it, but the production and engineering on this record seriously takes my breath away. Hearing this track on vinyl is a proper jaw-dropping moment. It's fucking stunning. It's pop, but it's ambient at the same time, with hints of dream pop. And to have something like this, which is so experimental, to close out a huge pop record, takes some serious guts. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, then you will know about my love for synths and electronica. This track scratches that itch in so many ways. I had to do some research when preparing for this episode, as I wanted to know what synths were actually used in Listen. From what I read, the track is built from three iconic 80s synths: the Yamaha DX7. I asked Santa repeatedly for this every Christmas, and I never got my wish. The Roland Super Jupiter, and the pioneering Fairlight CMI sampler, which was made popular by Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush. The track is quiet, but it has this full dynamic range as well. It's really difficult trying to put this track into words, and I haven't even mentioned the vocals yet. The band confirmed in the BBC4 Classic Albums documentary that the lyrics in the outro are complete nonsense. That ethereal, haunting, and seemingly wordless vocal performance on Listen, to me, is completely Cocteau Twins coded. It uses the exact same sonic philosophy that Elizabeth Fraser made legendary in the 1980s dream pop scene. She used her voice like an instrument, and I think Roland and Kurt are going for the same thing here. Together with backing vocalist Marilyn Davis, all three voices are using their vocals as texture. It's layered, pitched, and drenched in a shit ton of reverb. It's pure ear candy. It sheds its meaning and transforms into that haunting, gibberish Liz Fraser style and atmosphere. I always thought it was Marilyn delivering those operatic high notes, but in fact, it's Roland. He revealed in interviews that the soaring vocals at the end are actually him singing in a flawless, ultra high falsetto that was tightly processed in the studio. It blew my mind finding this out. The fact that he managed to replicate that otherworldly, angelic, and supernatural tone completely on his own makes the track even more brilliant. The title of the track is very apt. It really makes you sit up and listen. By stripping away standard pop structures and leaning into heavy reverb, delay, and abstract vocals wrapped up in experimentation. Tears for Fears were actively pulling the underground, avant-garde 4AD aesthetic into a massive multi-platinum pop record. So, why are we still talking about this album just over 40 years later? Upon its release in 1985, Songs from the Big Chair became a global phenomenon. The album reached number 2 in the UK, number 1 in the United States, and went on to sell more than 5 million copies in America alone, spending an incredible 79 consecutive weeks on the UK album chart. It transformed Tears for Fears from a successful British synth pop act into one of the biggest bands in the world. But sales figures only tell part of the story. What makes Big Chair so remarkable is how fresh it still sounds today. While much of the pop music of the mid 1980s can feel tied to its era, this album somehow exists outside of time. Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith combined huge hooks with sophisticated songwriting, ambitious arrangements, and a level of production that was years ahead of many of their contemporaries. From the layered textures of the working hour to the widescreen ambition of Shout and Everybody Wants to Rule the World, the album feels cinematic, expansive, and meticulously crafted. At a time when many pop records were built around simple synthesizer presets and drum machines, Big Chair embraced depth, atmosphere, and dynamic range. The result was an album that felt bigger, bolder, and more ambitious than much of the chart music surrounding it. It wasn't just a collection of hit singles, it was a complete listening experience. Critics and fans alike continue to point to its blend of pop, rock, new wave, dream pop, and experimental influences as one of the defining sounds of the decade. Its influence can still be heard in modern pop and alternative music today. Artists as diverse as The Killers, Lorde, Mooner, The War on Drugs, and countless synth pop and indie pop rock acts have embraced the same combination of emotional depth, soaring melodies, and atmospheric production that Tears for Fears perfected here. While they all sound very different on the surface, they all share the same understanding that pop music can be both intelligent and accessible, intimate and enormous at the same time. The album proved that intelligent, thoughtful songwriting and commercial success didn't have to be opposites. It also showed that live instrumentation, electronic textures, and huge synth arrangements could coexist within the same musical world, creating something both emotional and powerful. Songs from the Big Chair remains the gold standard for ambitious pop music. It's an album packed with timeless singles, but it's the depth beyond those hits that keeps listeners returning year after year. Whether you're discovering it for the first time or revisiting it decades later, it still sounds vital, exciting, and completely unique. For me, this isn't just one of the greatest albums of the 1980s. It's one of the greatest pop albums ever made. A flawless sophomore masterpiece that set a new benchmark for what pop music could be. And 40 years on, very few records have managed to reach the same heights. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like, or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. It really helps the algorithm push the video out to more people, and as a small independent podcast that's still growing, every like and subscription genuinely makes a huge difference. I'm posting full episodes, shorts, and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love this record and if you are a fan of Tears for Fears. I always read and respond to comments, and I love hearing what you all think. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl, and on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. The throwbacks will be continuing, and for next week, I will be discussing a 1987 sophomore record from a synth pop duo, which for me is a total pop classic. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.